to defend it. The deacon put the order out, so I'm on the mission. A lot of brothers on the couch just scratching and itching, rolling round like a door swinging on the hinges. And if the shoe fits, I hope they get offended.
Not no more. Not no more. Who's the king? Who's the king? What time is it? What time?
And if you ain't home, sleep what you in this for, cause it ain't no peace till we win this war.
Yeah, we got that fire, so don't run from the script. They get the gun from your hip, get hit with the fire. Not the fire that come from a clip, but the fire that come from my lips, and we ready to blaze. When that alarm erupt, that mean it's time that we armor up. Yeah, these heathens be really thinking they harming us, but our God won't allow them to tarnish us. They gon' honor us, so we advise them to let go. It was awesome to get go. It'll be the Omega when they see that purple and gold with the boots on the ground like a step show. Echo, let's go, take over the planet. Just as long as the Lord behind us, these heathens can't stand it, and we gon'
blitz. Give me your fist. So a net catch 153 big fish. Living millstone, turn around they necktie. Still tryna see did it sink that quick. Be a street bullet, stronghold, pull it down, boost to the ground. Ranks getting forward. And if you at home, sleep what you in this for, cause it ain't no peace till we win this war. 2020 blitz. Give me your fist. So a net catch 153 big fish. Living millstone, turn around they necktie. Still tryna see did it sink that quick. Be a street bullet, stronghold, pull it down, boost to the ground. Ranks getting forward. And if you at home, sleep what you in this for, cause it ain't no peace till we win this war.
Nice to meet you, Mr. War and Peace. Tell me one thing, how do we war in peace? The lions roaring while they sleep and count sheep. Kings and priests, I'd rather chill and sip the grape's blood. But the word of God is sitting on my taste buds. Got this little light of mine, I let it shine like the new moon. Not your average Jew dude, this brute food. The man of war fed me manna. Now I'm ready, this ain't playtime. A blitz, pulled a hit stick, Mike Vick to a K9.
Calling all soldiers from the SIP to California, from the bottom of the map to the desert, Arizona. Here to prophesy of war, famine, pestilence like Rona. You a goner if you ain't willing to mortify your members, make them quiver, cause it ain't no peace. You looking at your priest.
Your show will go live in 5 seconds. 4, 3,
when I
2,
say you better repair,
1.
that's the end of your existence. We blitzing 2020 down in Tennessee, Memphis.
Give me your fist. So a net catch 153 big fish. Living millstone, turn around they necktie. Still tryna see did it sink that quick. Be a street bullet, stronghold, pull it down, boost to the ground. Ranks getting forward. And if you at home,
time. I think it's time. We out here killing each other. I think it's time for this. So everybody on my Facebook Live, I'm with this.
We need a black man in Memphis, Tennessee. What you seeing is the man of God.
When the trumpet sound or the prophet start, we touch it down on every corner. Late night and early morning with 100 scriptures for a damn scorner. At the class, we ain't tired yet, watch us roll out like a transformer. Bill Street, here we go again, down in Memphis 10 where we getting it in. Prophesying till we get the win, prophesying till the kingdom won. Ghost rider when I'm hitting camp, word of God, fire coming on my tongue. 30 days, we ain't missing none.
Power hour, it's the what? Power hour, it's the who? Power hour, yeah. Blacks, Hispanics, and natives. Power hour, it's the what? Power hour, it's the who? Power hour, yeah. Blacks, Hispanics, and every Saturday morning you need to be tuning in. Wake up, get crust out your eyes. We about to go live, so come get the schooling in. About our oppression, we answer the questions like how do we get out this lower state? We let the scripts prophesy. We bringing the Bible to life so that you relate. The world thinks we're rejects, but that word we reject. Watch and we'll show you. Precept upon precept, line upon line, the scripts say we're the greatest, and they can't debate it. Salvation is only for the blacks, Hispanics, and natives. Power hour, it's the what? Power hour, it's the who? Power hour, yeah. Blacks, Hispanics, and natives. Power hour, it's the what? Power hour, it's the who? Power hour, yeah. Blacks, Hispanics, and natives. Power hour, it's the what? Power hour, it's the who? Power hour, yeah. Blacks, Hispanics, and natives. Power hour, it's the what? Power hour, it's the who? Power hour, yeah. Blacks, Hispanics, and natives.
Shalom, shalom. Welcome to the Power Hour Plus edition. I am Captain Joshua.
Shalom. Good evening, Captain Apario.
Shalom, Soldier Raphael.
And in studio, we have a very special guest. We are blessed with his presence. Been definitely a teacher of ours. Not the way that some of y'all say he's a teacher of yours. We've had the distinct privilege, Captain Apartment and myself, to in our formative years in this truth, come up directly under this man.
Yes, sir.
Face to face, right? Not through video. That's never lost on us, right?
Right.
A lot of you guys know these guys just from videos and stuff alone. We got to teach and speak and fellowship and get to know these men face to face. The mighty Deacon Yawasap.
Mighty Deacon Yawasap.
Shalom, brothers and sisters. Most High Christ bless y'all. Trying to figure out which way to look. Do I look at the camera?
Yeah, you can look at the camera. Yep, right there.
Most
That's
High
yours.
Christ bless you all, brothers and sisters. I am honored to be here and to be a part of what I call another milestone in IUIC. So it's good to be able to partake in that. And I've always been, as you know, all of y'all know, I've always been excited about this particular show because it represents that milestone to take us to the next level. And I truly believe. I'm honored and happy to be here among you great men. Let's get it going.
Pleasure's all ours.
Hey, they said turn his mic up. I don't know if that needs to be done from in here. Should I increase his gain on his mic? They said they're not hearing him too good.
Maybe if I is that better? If I guess
gain,
get right up on it.
He's
I hear you good.
Yeah. Well, I was kind of far away from it, so because usually I would be up on it. So.
Okay. No, well, I increased the gain up on that. Okay. All praise to the Most High, and it's interesting that you say that, Deke, because we had, if not for you, I don't think we would have been doing this 2-hour edition that we do. It was you, and obviously, I guess the Spirit was moving something, and you came to me and you said, hey, I got everybody else moving and rocking. I want to set y'all up with a show. And, you pushed us to be able to do kind of get on this rotation, on the official rotation. We had our show, which was really targeted as a regional show that we've been doing for 4 years now. Yeah, just about. That's the Saturday edition that we do. And Deacon pushed us to go ahead and get this rocking. So all praise to the Most High in Christ for that.
Well, what I'd like to say to that is that IUIC has always been a steady practice in consistency, and always trying and always seek to remember our humble beginnings, as we would say. Bishop Nathaniel, I'll start with him because he has always had that thought to be neat, to be punctual, to be innovator in terms of thinking about the next level. So that came all the way from the old school, from the one. Even when we was at One West, the particular camp that me and Bishop was a part of was like the premiere of taking things to the next level. A lot of the teaching that went outside of New York was primarily spearheaded by what we were doing in our particular camp, the 44th Street camp, RER, and all that. So Marshall. So that spirit was always with Bishop. When I came on, he always had that knack to want to take things to the next level. And you know what? I'll mention this, because it doesn't get talked about enough. Because we're talking about Northern Kingdom and setting up this particular program here. That was a brainchild of Bishop. And I'm going to tell you why I say that. When we were at the old school, there were several shows that we were doing. One of the shows was called Haitian Perspective. Another one was called Holy Bible, Truth or Fiction, The Real Jews Are Black. The Bible Book of Our Fathers was actually that's where that particular show, actually the original concept of that came from. But while we were doing that, Bishop also wanted to teach Northern Kingdom. So what he would do, he would have us on the set. He would bring in, there was one of the Northern Kingdom brothers. He would actually have them on one side, and have the Levite brother on the other side. And so while he was teaching, after he finished breaking down the verse, he said, okay, give it to him in Creole. I'm telling you. And we didn't even have a before we actually had Haitian Perspective, which was one of the shows. There was another one called Nuestra Cultura Verdadera. Our true how do I know that? Right, that was the name of the show.
Yep.
So and he had Ephraim reading. So after he would break it down in English, he said, "Okay, give it to him in Spanish." So that was always the thrust of taking things to the next level. So when I talked about me and you, we had a conversation yesterday. I guess I got to stay closer, right? Well, when we had that conversation yesterday, we were talking about milestones. I forgot to mention that. That was another example of taking things to the next level. And the seeds of what we're talking about now was then, and that's the reason why I mentioned Bishop Nathaniel, because he always had that. That's the reason why I always gravitated. Me and him was always, close like that, because he always had that that yearning of wanting to take things to the next level.
Yeah,
I'm talking about a lot of things.
I mean, he's masterful at that. I mean, I remember in the early years, not that I ever questioned him. I mean, we would just. We always talk. I was a different vibe. There was just a lot of respect because the amount of information and the knowledge that was coming out. It wasn't shell shock because we were able to process it, but it was astounding. And one of the things that I always noticed was the way he would push us to progress. And this is why, and obviously that's driven by the Spirit of the Most High.
Exactly.
This is why you could see an organization that is just shy of 20 years old have accomplished what we've accomplished. In comparison, not to take anything away from where all this came from and the original schools and the original elders and all that stuff like that, but the progress, the exponential growth, like you talk about. Let me use your words.
Okay.
Right? The exponential growth in the past, I would say even just 10 years is more than what you probably saw in the first 30, 40 years of the movement. And that's a telling sign spiritually when I see things like that, because in acceleration and growth means we're moving faster and faster towards that mark that Paul speaks about that we should press towards.
Absolutely.
So it's not lost on some of us. I know some people can't see the end from the beginning.
Right.
It's not lost on some of us the impact of stuff. But I will say this: I wasn't thinking of this show as any type of milestone. You saying that kind of gives me a little bit more of a wake up call. Not that I was taking this thing lightly, but it puts a different perspective for to hear you say that you see it as a milestone moment.
Right. I use the term milestone because there's first of all, let me give all credit and praises to the Most High and His Son Jesus the Christ. I know I was doing a lot of talk about what we've done here as brothers, but the Spirit of the Most High is what is the driving force behind what we do. But I always like to when I talk about milestones, setting up this particular show here is the milestone, like the building in New York. That was one milestone because prior to that we were in Paulding, and we had a few schools.
Actually, all those steps were actually milestones.
Yeah, exactly.
Even 1088 was a milestone. Right?
Exactly. But when we talked about, like, there was a class that Bishop had did called The Fear of Being Born Again. That particular class was about the Israelite, what we call the Israelite stereotypical box that would go to the water's edge and be afraid to take it to the next level. You probably remember
I do remember that.
We were saying that. And the thing at that point was about, instead of renting and, dealing with leases and all that, why don't we try to own a building? So we had a lot of doubters. We had a lot of people that were against it and all of that. But when we did it, once it was done, the rest of us that saw it, began to say, well, maybe we can do this thing.
Yeah, that's exactly
the
right.
confidence began to come, and that's when we started really focusing on the importance of vision, image, because when you see these things, when you see yourself, when you see people like you doing the things that you was always taught that you couldn't do, then you actually see it. You'd be like, well, wait a minute, let me re-examine these spiritual muscles and and make something really happen. You know,
Yep,
so
Yep.
it grew legs of its own, so to speak. So that was a particular milestone. That we did the things with the Memphis milestone. That's the reason why
Yeah,
we call
called
it the
Memphis
milestone. Indicative of literally what I'm talking about. So once that happened, things went to the next level. You know, so, and this right here represents another. This particular show represents a whole nother level of a milestone because this is the platform. Like you interviewed Dr.
Sanchez.
Sanchez. A lot of Israelites probably don't even know who he is.
Yeah. Well, we got a lot of feedback like that. A lot of people like them. I didn't even know there was a group of so-called Hispanics that was doing stuff like that.
Exactly.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So to have that to come out on this show, you probably got a lot of Northern Kingdom watching, and they're gonna continue to increase and watch because that mountain has to get opened up, and this is the spark. This is the spark plug that I believe that's going to get it done. And I see that the Most High is behind this. Christ is behind this, and He's using IUIC to do it. And I'm happy to be a part of that.
All praises to the Most High. You know what's interesting about milestones is, I guess I'm gonna say it's like fine wine, right? You appreciate it more in hindsight than when it's first bottled.
Right.
And I think I see what you're saying because a lot of those moments that you mentioned at the time, we didn't think of them as a milestone. We were just doing the work.
Exactly.
And it wasn't until we saw the impact after.
Right.
And that's as such is the case, I believe, with milestones in general.
Right.
You don't go into it and saying, hey, I know this is a milestone, unless obviously, you have some foresight and experience like you do. But most people won't see it as that.
Right.
And then you kind of look in hindsight to these moments
and
that launch certain things
Right.
and certain avenues, and you
Defining
say,
moments.
gosh,
And
those defining moments.
Exactly.
And you say, wow, that was a milestone moment for us.
Exactly. And only only the continuation in time and progress causes you to look back at those particular moments that you didn't think was a milestone and realize it was. I use this as an example. Look at a car company when they made the first, I guess what they call the Model T. When they first built that car, they were not thinking about using it as a historical milestone point.
Right.
Until many years later. Now that same car is in a plaque room somewhere with the velvet ropes around it because it represented vision when there was no. You understand what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So that's how I look at these. I made mental note, so to speak, on what I call the different milestones in IUIC because these things represent next step visionary situations that really you can look back and say, wow, I can see how the Lord was really dealing with us to bring things to the next level. And you know what's sad about saying that? Why would somebody take that and say that, well, look how IUIC speaking in this braggadocious kind of thing? It should never be thought of that way.
No.
All of us have the potential to do what God put in us to do. Why is it that we feel like if you see your brothers making a move towards something great, you got to be trying to hold them back, or trying to say something. Oh, look at them, It's nothing like that at all. You should be inspired by it and wake up your spiritual muscles to do. You understand what I'm saying?
Well, remember the scripture says, "From whence come wars? From among yourselves."
Yeah, exactly.
And then he says that later on, he says, "This is why you should esteem." Others better than yourself.
Exactly.
And that's not a natural thing for the black and brown man, for the so-called black and brown. It's not.
Yeah.
Well, it's spiritual,
right?
And it's also a product of our conditioning that has us that way. So it's tough to be able to do that. But obviously, the Most High has given us a measure of success with that because even our haters can actually even people who were traitors to us will sit in an interview and say, I saw people's lives change. Yeah. I saw people come out of gangs. I saw people do this. I saw unity between black and Hispanics like I never saw before. In the same breath, they're talking evil of us.
Right.
But you cannot take that away.
Exactly.
And that's the spirit of the Lord moving. Like we always talk about the secret sauce.
Exactly.
Everybody says, oh, we got a connection. We're just joking with the History Channel. Like they're going to think, oh, look, they got us on the History Channel and all this other stuff. Listen, is keeping God's commandments. Is and always moving forward, in that. And it's interesting that you bring those things up because it's gonna work perfectly with the flow of the show today because we've been talking about Albizu Campos. You and I were talking about it a little earlier.
Yes, sir.
We were talking about Albizu Campos, and we went into his background. And if you notice, I had prefaced the show, and we were speaking about those things last week. And I said some people might hear what we're saying and fall off the horse because they're like, why are you talking about his childhood? What are those things? It's interesting that you're using the milestone because what we were reading were milestone moments in this particular man's formative year, in this particular revolutionary's formative years that helped drive each decision after that as to what he was going to do with those things.
Right. You have to acknowledge those steps, those milestones. You have to acknowledge those landmarks in your progress. You know, you have to.
Right. All praises to the Most High. All praises to the Most High. It's funny that you used the example of the car. I'm going to butcher it. I had seen a meme. It's a motivational meme, and it said, it showed a DeLorean, right? And if you know what a DeLorean is, if you don't know and you're a millennial, it's the Back to the Future car, right? And the story behind the millennial was that it was supposed to revolutionize sports cars and all this other stuff, but it was heavy. It was expensive. Anyway, long story short, they didn't make too many of them, right? But it did. What was deemed at a failure in the car at the time drove the car industry in a lot of ways to where it is now. The DeLorean was almost the Model T of the modern era because of the impact it had on the car industry to move things forward with vehicles, right? So it was a picture of a DeLorean, and it says, a father gives his son this car, and he says, look, sell this, see if you could get money. So he says he went to the car dealer, and they said, nah, it's too old and beat up. We'll give you $1,000 for it. He said no. So he went to a car auction, and they said, maybe we'll give you $5,000 for it. His son was all dejected. He said, man, Dad, you gave me this piece of crap. I don't know what to do with this car. He said, here, why don't you go here? Go to this collector's car show. And he went there. He said, Dad, they offered me $100,000 for the car. They said it was a classic. It was this, it was that, so on and so forth. And the moral of the lesson is that basically not everybody's going to see those milestones. It has to be certain people that are going to appreciate those moments and see those things to move that stuff forward. But when you mentioned the Model T, maybe because it was just a couple days ago, I saw that thing and I was like, damn, okay.
That's a spirit.
I said, damn, that's heavy. That's on point. That's on point. Someone said, I'm surprised to see the Deacon on the Power Hour. Hey, we've been talking it up. We've been talking it up.
Yeah, exactly. He said, surprise.
We've been talking it up. We've been talking it up.
This has been a work that has been in the makers. Like I said, going all the way back to the 90s.
Yeah,
this was something that we knew had to come up. You know, so as the Most High is making certain things happen, you know, this had to come right on with it.
Yeah.
So
all praises, all praises. So. I'm going to jump right in, right? Last week, if you tuned in, right, we were speaking about Albizu Campos, all right? We've been going over the book War Against All Puerto Ricans, Revolution and Terror in America's Colony by Nelson A. Dennis, who is from the tribe of Manessa, based on what we understand. It's been several weeks that we've been speaking about in this book, bringing out things of the revolutionary spirit. Again, thinking about what Deacon and we were just discussing about milestones. And you speak about what he was saying. There was not people really pushing things forward in this truth as far as having, you know, Northern Kingdom involved. He also mentioned Levi. And we found it important because most people don't know that we had revolutionary people. I mentioned it, I think, last week or the week before. Bishop from years ago was always telling us, who are your revolutionaries? And he knew some. It's not like he's asking us that question because he didn't know. He was one of the main ones, one of the forerunners teaching Northern Kingdom history. But he was always pushing it on us. Who are the Northern Kingdom revolutionaries? Yeah, that's great. You can name off some Judah ones. You can name off, you know, Benjamin ones. So that's great. He said, who are your Northern Kingdom revolutionaries? And, you know, at the time, it might not have struck the same, right? And we were looking at, you know, damn, we didn't got any. We're looking at people from the 1400s, right? That was the last time we had revolutions, and that's not true. So we want to bring that to light to let you know that that spirit is there, that there's common ground, that you see that the Israelites, even in absence of these particular movements having the truth, were there fighting, all right? And the aim is, if the spirit, you know, we know the spirit going to do what it do, but the spirit's in you, you're going to see that it's in our spirit, because you always hear Northern Kingdom, silly dove, silly dove, silly, and it's true. It's true for the most part. But we want to try to inspire the people to see that revolutionary spirit that was there amongst our people. All right. We went over the black and brown unity after the interview with David Sanchez. Right. So we're here. We're gonna jump back in. We're gonna continue to detail a little bit this man's life. And it's interesting because what we're going to segue into as we read on is one of those influential moments that started to shape his movement, right? With the nationalist movement in Puerto Rico, the Puerto Rican independence movement, which a lot of people aren't aware of.
Right. Hey, can I mention something
Because
we were talking about milestones, and this is something me and you we talked about last night. We know we have enemies that don't want this, and I'm talking about outside of turncoats and the people among us that fall out of this truth for various reasons. But we know that we actually have real straight up enemies that do not want the tribes to repent.
Right.
Okay. And I remember I was talking to Captain Aparium yesterday, and I was mentioning about in 1988, I was listening to the radio. And this is when it took me many years later to realize that even back then, there was a conspiracy to make sure that the truth about the slave trade with Southern Kingdom and what happened in Northern Kingdom with the conquistadors and all of that it's all dealing with the same people.
Mm-hmm.
In the 1988, 89, I was listening to the radio in New York, WLIB, and they had this professor, because he used to come on the Apollo Theater, Edward Scobie. He was speaking, and he was talking about the Haitian Revolution. The general Rochambeau wanted to go in and turn the island of Haiti back into slavery. And he said that he sent his troops in to kill every Haitian African alive. That's how he was putting it. And as he was telling that story, he began to also segue directly into what Ponce de Leon, Christopher Columbus, Hernando Cortez, and he started talking about all the horrible atrocities that happened there. And while he was telling that, all in one breath, they pulled the plug on the transmitter.
Oh.
I mean, you hear it clearly on the tape. They pulled because I used to record everything, so I had the tape running, and you actually hear the transmitter, the plug get pulled right out.
Damn. Yeah, because back then you heard it, right?
You just heard it. You just heard it just disappeared. And the proof, because I kept it recording, because I was I'm waiting for it to come back. So the signal came back about 3 minutes, and the professor was totally on a whole nother subject. But then the woman who was hosting it, I forget her name. She's running the GBE, what they call it, the Global Black Experience. She said that we are WLIB. We were temporarily off the air. So she makes it clear that they were off the air. But the professor, he didn't even realize it because he was just still rolling.
Oh, man. So they just
popped it because they did not want the listening audience to make that connection.
Wow. I get what you're saying.
It was it.
Hey, that's another interesting point you bring out, because what we're going to read is that his first speech that he did and his first cause that he fought for so-called Puerto Ricans got him on the map with his enemies. So you're in the spirit when you say that, because what comes with those milestones is going to be the attention of those enemies, the rulers of darkness, all right, of this world in those high places, all right, you get on their radar. And after that, there was a conspiracy. I mean, we're going to read the details. He had hundreds of FBI agents following this guy after that.
Yeah,
all that.
Hey,
you got to see.
I'm listening.
Hey,
I'm here.
And we're going to see. They waved the carrot in front of him.
Wow.
They tried to get him to sell out, and he ain't roll with it. So I'm going to jump in. So last week we left off with how he was speaking about you'll read history about him. This is why before we read anything that you find on Wikipedia about him, anything else, right? We're reading from this book because it gives an intimate background of his life, and so that you can understand how sometimes just them omitting certain aspects of information will lead you to speculate why he did something. Like you and I were speaking in the house about how he helped the Irish Revolutionary movement for a time.
And people wouldn't understand
and
why he
people
did
would
that.
be like, why would he be helping Edom then if he was so for your people? But when you've read what we read and what we went over last week, what you see is, right, that was him trying to study his enemy to learn things that was gonna ultimately help his people.
So basically, it spooked that sat by the door.
Right. That's what we were talking about earlier. He was basically the spook, that sat by the door. That sat by the door. Because he had a Harvard education. They offered him judgeships, positions in large corporations. And what he saw amongst those people, right, dealing with Esau, the Caucasian man, and how they were rolling here in the United States and how his people were in Puerto Rico, disgusted him to the point where he said he knew then I'll never be one of them, and they'll never accept me as one of them, even with their education, even living their lifestyle, so on and so forth. And it said this part that stood out: he found meaning and purpose in his life in fighting for his people. That's where he found meaning and purpose, right? Not in riches, not in I got this uppity education, right? There was something deeper in him, right? So let's jump to page 114, right? You on there? I want 114.
You know, it's heavy that you say, right? I want you to get into that, but there's certain things that you're saying.
Go ahead, sir. That's good.
When people find meaning to their lives, you know, that's when you become alive. One of the reasons why, that drugs, drugs and the different things that we're plagued with is so prevalent in our community is because we don't have a true purpose. We don't understand the reason why we're actually here. You know, and when you don't have any purpose about your life, you don't value your life.
Vacant esteem.
Exactly. And then you'll get caught up in drugs and stuff like that. So when you made the point that he found value, as you're about to bring out, it's important to really highlight that about value and purpose, because that's what's wrong with our people as a whole.
So I'm gonna read this part here because now mind you, this is so-called Puerto Rican. He gave a speech at the Irish Assembly, and again, this is all practice for him for when he was ready to speak for his people. Are you on 114? Okay, great. So he says, "I am a British nobleman, so there is no need to inquire my opinion on the Irish question. Well, gentlemen, I would not be a Britisher. I would not be a nobleman if I failed to admit that Mr. Campos has just delivered the most complete, the most brilliant speech on this matter that I have ever heard." Talking about building and sustaining a revolution for his people. In 1921, Albizu graduated from law school as class valedictorian and received multiple job offers. So remember, we were reading how they tried to keep him down just for being Puerto Rican. They tried to delay his entries, stagger his exams. He wound up graduating with honors from Harvard, and then he went to Harvard Law. And to be the valedictorian means you had the highest GPA of your whole class, even out of all them Edomites that were there. He was offered a clerkship with the U.S. Supreme Court. He was offered a diplomatic post at the U.S. Embassy to Mexico. He was offered a judgeship in Yauco, Puerto Rico, and an executive position with the U.S. corporation paying $15,000 per year. At that time, that was like six figures of what we would have today. Albizu refused them all and returned to his hometown of Ponce to pursue his growing obsession, the independence of Puerto Rico. He was driven by something more than all those material things, right? And he surely, for most people, would have been justified in taking those things because of his poor upbringing. That was not the case with him. That was not the case. I'm not going to read this part. Let's jump to page 115.
Contrast with that is how many of our people, like Bishop's been rich of our people, have basically had the carrot dangled in front of their head, right? Or at least understood that education and moving up something that they needed to do, but they were doing it solely for themselves. Obviously, this man was about his people, because to turn all that down, coming from a poor background, it speaks volumes.
Yeah.
You
So
know,
most people will be enticed to do it and just
without a doubt,
and totally go the other way and sell out and all the rest of it.
like a lot of our people that get into
Yeah.
politics, right? They may have the right idea, some of them, right intentions rather, but when they get in there and they see it's not like that, they still stay there. So they're guilty.
You're right.
Right.
Because they could walk away.
Oh, we're going to talk about that. We're going to talk, and they know those tactics with our people. We're going to bring out them scripts that talk about how a gift destroyeth the heart, it take away your wisdom and all that stuff. He knew that. He knew that. So I'm just going to give a little background before we jump to the next page. So his reputation as being someone that was fighting for the people grew more when he started to write for El Nacionalista de Ponce and advocating for independence around the island. So it says it continued to grow after a political rally in 1925 when he removed every miniature American flag from the podium and stuffed them in his pocket. So he went around and was taking down that nonsense. It grew from 1927 to 1930 when he traveled to Cuba, Panama, Mexico, Venezuela, Peru, the Dominican Republic, and Haiti, campaigning and networking for his revolution, right? It's no coincidence that he was in all these places because why? Judah and Israel were pressed together and they would not let us go. He knew this. So he went to all these places to learn what was going on there and how he would advocate for revolution. And one thing I learned when we went to Cuba, Zeph and I went when we went for a little advanced reconnaissance, was the overlap with the revolutionaries at that time from their different countries. They would travel and meet with each other because while it may seem like their mission was focused on their country, the overarching goal was the same for each of them, which was get the United States the hell out of here and meddling in our business. So they actually commiserated together quite a bit on these things, right? You read about how Che Guevara inspired Fidel, and Fidel went bad, the cares of the world and stuff, but his intentions going in were good. He gave everybody a house when he took over. He gave and the reason that type of stuff doesn't work in this present world is because America doesn't want it to work, right? So they put those things in place and they sanction them to hell, and that's why they have the poverty that they have there. But my point being is that he knew that he needed to continue to build momentum for this and rally more than just the people on the island to his cause when he was doing this stuff. Right? You had a thought, Deke? I don't want to.
No, you can go
Okay,
ahead
all right. Okay.
Well, you was mentioning about how these what people would call revolutionaries came together and they were more trying to work together because they all had a common problem.
Yep.
Or common enemy, I should say. Malcolm spoke about that.
Mm-hmm.
So this is the kind of thought that was definitely going around during those times, as well as the times of Malcolm and the rest of the brothers.
Yep.
You know, the brown berets, all that.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so they were all thinking on that level.
They all understood that. Yep.
They all understood that.
Mm-hmm. So he said
that was before the dope era.
That
put us all asleep.
That was right. So when he spoke about U.S. banks owning Puerto Ricans' land, the U.S. Navy controlling their borders, the U.S. Congress writing their laws, and U.S. companies paying them starvation wages in the sugarcane fields, everyone knew what he was talking about, right? They all knew that common enemy. He reminded his audiences, everywhere you look, you see a Yankee Army, Yankee Navy, Yankee Police, and Yankee courts. And according to the Yankees, owning one person makes you a scoundrel, right? Because you're talking about the mid-1900s now, where supposedly they were against slavery. We know that that element wasn't there, but he's saying supposedly slavery is bad, right? They tell you can't own people anymore. They have the books on their laws. But owning a nation makes you a colonial benefactor. Esau's so deep. When you read about how it says he's wiser than Daniel, he's so deep. While he abolished individual slavery, as in owning Raphael, owning Aparium,
he took whole countries.
He took whole countries and dictated what they did.
Exactly.
Which was slavery by another name.
Exactly.
And didn't call it slavery.
Same thing that they did with the prison system.
Yup. Same thing.
Exact
right.
Thing. They call themselves abolishing slavery, but end up putting it in the 13th Amendment. Then you set up a system
their game up.
that manufactures crime basically, and then you fit right in, and then you have your slavery all over again.
That's it.
Right, under the guise of something called democracy, that we're all one people.
Right. Yeah. So man, I saw that. I said, damn, he was hip to it. He said, yeah, they may have abolished slavery, and they tell you that's wrong, but they're okay with them owning whole nations.
And these are his actual words, just in quotations.
Yeah, it's in quotations.
This
that
is
was
the words that this man used.
Right, right. So in 1930, Albizu became president of the Nationalist Party of Puerto Rico. Although the party did not have an island-wide electoral apparatus or any members in public office, it qualified for ballot status in the 1932 election cycle. Now, this is all he knew. He didn't have the scriptures. So he thought the answer was get into their politics, right? And if I could get into their politics, then I can wrest control from them. You know, a lot of times we bring out that trust in the shadow of Egypt, and we only talk about it from the side of us willingly wanting to go to them to get help, but not from the perspective of the illusion that you think that you can get help from those people and you still wind up going to them anyway. You get what I'm saying? Right? You got those of our people that they're like, no, yes, I'm supporting these people, I'm behind that. Kind of like what you were saying. They go into it with the intentions that it's going to be good for them in the politics, and then it just corrupts them completely because that's not our salvation.
Dr. David Sanchez mentioned that.
Right. But he could still not get over. That's one thing that you can tell. He could still not get over the fact that when we asked him what the answers were, his answer was still politics. Yeah, we got to take over the island. We got to do this. We got to do that. No, that's not. We know. See, this is where we give a twist when we give this stuff out. That our power and our salvation is in none other but the Most High God. And keeping these commandments as Israelites, right? That's what we need to focus on. So he said, although the party did not have an island-wide electoral apparatus or any members in public office, it qualified for ballot status in the 1932 election cycle with the required 28,000 inscribed members, meaning there was support behind his movement, right? The nationalists were dedicated to one overwhelming cause, achieving independence for Puerto Rico as quickly and unconditionally as possible. This included the reclamation of all Puerto Rican lands, the nationalization of all banks, the reinstatement of Spanish as the primary language of public school instruction, and the elimination of tariff payments to the United States. Just to show you all the elements, that's owning a nation, right? That's slavery. They basically instituted slavery, but on a scale that they didn't need to have the appearance of chains and anything else, right? And instead of owning individuals, everybody was all right with them owning nations, right? So he says this platform of unconditional independence became more compelling as the Great Depression swept Puerto Rico and hunger gripped the island. Also in 1930, Albizu used his legal skills to create a series of bonds registered on Wall Street. These bonds were an investment in the Republic of Puerto Rico, redeemable for the island's treasury on the day it became independent. He knew that they needed economics as well. We learned that from the scriptures as well. You read that in Acts where it talks about them having all things in common. Dealing with things, but this is on a grander scale because he was doing it for nationhood, right?
You see, he was a problem.
Yeah. Oh, we're gonna get to that point.
He was a problem for Esau.
Hey, Dennis wrote this thing very eloquently.
He did.
Because he's laying all this, and if you don't stay on the horse, you're gonna miss why he's mentioning such detail. Right? Because somebody look at this. Well, who do we care? Why do we care that he was trying to run for office? Why do we care?
He's building it up.
Oh yeah, he's building it up. He says the first bond offering was for $200,000 in increments of 10, 50, and 100. Right? In 1931, Albizu defended a nationalist named Luis Velasquez, who had slapped the Chief Justice of the Puerto Rican Supreme Court during a political dispute and been charged with assault. The case went to the U.S. Court of Appeals, and when Albizu won, so this guy smacked the judge, and he won the case for him.
So he was his counsel.
He represented him. It became known as Velasquez's slap in the face. Throughout the early 1930s, Albizu continued to speak all over the island, and the crowds kept growing. In 1932, Albizu ran for the Puerto Rican Senate. He lost, and the Nationalist Party did not win a single seat because they conspired against him, right? In fact, a poet named Luis Muñoz Marin, who they named the airport after, and he plays a role later. In future shows, we're going to talk about this guy and how his intentions were good, and he's an example of how the gift destroyed his potential, right? And they offered something similar to Albizu, but again, you're going to see, we're getting to stay on the horse with us. Stay on the horse. It's going to get juicy. Just stay with us. It all lays it down. So he sailed in from Greenwich Village and took the very seat that Albizu had worked for. There's some backstory behind this, which is why I have it underlined, which we're not going to cover today. This is not some fly-by-night guy. He plays an important role in the history of Puerto Rico's fight for independence, all right? Despite all the speeches, conferences, debates, campaigns, editorial columns, and lawsuits, the United States was not taking Albizu or his Nationalist Party very seriously. Not yet. Everything changed with the sugarcane strike of 1934. From that moment on, the Americans wanted Albizu gone, right? So now we're going to start heading into those milestone moments that changed this guy's whole life, because this guy suffered. He was, I think for 20 years, we're going to read, he was in and out of prison. He was only out 4 of those like 20 years or something like that, because this is how they were trying to silence it, right? As the Great Depression deepened, the U.S. banks that control Puerto Rico's sugar plantations cut wages all over the island. Sugarcane workers who had gotten 75 cents for a 12-hour day in 1929 were down to 45 cents in 1933. So instead of going up with inflation, they were losing money, all right? Starvation was rampant. And during the last 6 months of 1933, 85 strikes and protests erupted in the tobacco, needlework, and transportation industries. The bitterest conflict, however, was in the cane fields. On November 8, 1933, the mill workers of Central, Plazuela, and Barceloneta went on strike before the start of the harvest and stayed out of work until December 5th. On December 6th, cane fires erupted in Central Coloso, and 1,200 workers went on strike. By December 7th, 8,000 more workers had joined the Coloso strike. On December 31st, the largest sugarcane plantation on the island, Central Huanica, went on strike. In early 1934, the workers of Puerto Rico's entire sugar industry were striking. Now, remember, that's profound because we went over an earlier episode where we spoke about how what you know as Domino Sugar today was built on the back of Puerto Ricans, all right? The premier sugar producer was built on the back of Puerto Ricans and on the United States coming in there and taking over after the Spanish-American War. And I'm not talking about 400 years ago. I'm talking about 100 years ago is when all this stuff went down. All right. So this is prevalent. Sugar was the thing. They converted many fields into that. That was the main crop that they had going on there for them. Right. So it says, against not only their employers, but their own labor leaders. Without consulting the rank and file, the Federación Libre del Trabajo, the Free Federation of Workers, had signed an island-wide labor agreement whose terms did little for laborers and left their wages virtually unchanged. They got sold out by their own people. The Federation leaders, most of them comfortably ensconced in the Puerto Rican government, had sold out the workers. Because like you said, they probably went in with good intentions and they partook of what was there. And we're going to find out. We're going to get insight into what was offered to them to sell their people out. All right? That Judas spirit, those traitors that are there. You smiling. You got something.
No, because I'm thinking about like when I watched The End of Poverty, he talked about you can either follow what we want with the jackals, or they will send the subversives in first. That's what happened with these union guys here. That you speaking about the
Federation the
leaders.
union for the
those are the
sugar plantation
union
workers.
guys. So
Yep.
the subversives is what caused them to be turncoats.
Yep, that's exactly.
And they didn't even have to send in the jackals.
Nope, they didn't even have to do that. Yep. And so on January 11, 1934, the sugarcane workers of Guayama reached out to a new leader. They asked Pedro Albizu Campos, as head of the Nationalist Party, to address an assembly of 6,000 people today. And this was the turning point. This is when he became a problem after this speech. So let's go to the next page, 117. We're going to read about that. You'll see a picture of him in the speech there, right? It was a hot Friday night in the Plaza Pública Cristobal Colón. A breeze from the nearby Atlantic barely stirred the palm trees of the Guayama town square as a man wearing a black jacket, white shirt, and black bow tie stepped up to the Nationalist platform. He understood that appearance was important, that you needed to represent yourself. Yes, he didn't have a royal purple garment like we have, but he understood that he wasn't going to go up there in a T-shirt. He wasn't going to go up there sloppy. He went up there.
He understood imagery.
He understood it. He understood the imagery. Because remember, we're talking about the revolutionary spirit. Don't get lost on that. We're highlighting this particular brother to show you the same elements that you see our bishop push, our deacons push, and the stuff that we've been doing.
Even back in the old school, the flyers, the regular flyers that you would give out, that was redone. And I was telling Bishop, I said I actually have some of the original flyers of the ones that he designed way back then. Neat, beautiful, even by today's standards.
Hey, I'm gonna take it. I'm gonna tell you something. Dealing with the flyers, and Captain Parham's a stickler on this. just the way it's folded and held as you present it to them. Shows you something. Some brothers have it all here, rolled up. They're sweating on it. It's dirty.
Right.
When we out in camp, a Parm's always like, listen, you should hold it like this, hold it a certain way.
Right.
And you notice we're the only dummies who would bark against that because Nation of Islam, they hold their paper that way too.
Exactly. Not only that, what's this other group? Jehovah's Witness?
Yep.
I'm sure that they have daggone documents that tell them to hold it a particular way.
Yes. Do you know that their stands and their carts are proprietary? You cannot find their carts for their literature.
Wow.
I was trying to look for it because I thought it would be good for like little drop-down flyer missions because it's on wheels.
Right.
And we could bring a bunch of literature with us. You cannot find anything remotely close to it. I'm sure if we got up close and personal with one, a brother could probably build it. You cannot buy that particular thing. It's proprietary, and they don't sell it.
Right.
The hell is this?
And they and they don't sell it. No, these are those little nuances.
Yes, because they pay attention to the detail of imagery.
Yes. These are those little
wanted to corner the
nuances.
market on it.
And the point is, all those things are necessary for a revolution.
Exactly.
That's the reason we've been going over this theme in this series, is to show you all these things that all revolutions and all revolutionaries had in common. And if we can learn from that and add the thing that was missing from their movements, we're unstoppable.
Hey, the Black Panthers understood because they went with the berets, the black leather jackets.
Absolutely.
Brown berets understood,
they understood that.
Okay, the young lords understood that. To an extent, they all understood that imagery is everything.
It is.
And listen, these young brothers, you have to take those offices important. Little things. Hey, we got a joke here. We had one brother. It's hot out here, right? So you like real hot. This is the desert. His office was the water. The brother would bring the water, right, like this, the bottled water.
Yeah.
In the plastic that it was in, no cooler, no ice, unrefrigerated, and then set it on the hot ground while the brothers were at camp.
Wow.
So when it was 90
So
degrees, right, 95.
The water is
right?
95 degrees.
Right? No, even hotter because the sun's been heating it up. So he's giving his brothers boiled water. Is that a revolutionary?
No.
That's not a revolutionary.
That's how I don't give a shit, Harry.
Flyers not folded right and crooked, out of order. All those. See, some of y'all like pissed off because you want to be up there teaching. You want to be up there reading. You want to be doing different things. Not realizing all the necessary parts to those actions are you bringing the water to camp is revolutionary. Something as little as that. Y'all got to open up your understanding to see that stuff.
Right. Even talking about, because every part of required change requires all levels of discipline action.
Yes.
Like we talk about, we have the men in the IUIC that's doing the work. They're trying to get things going. But if you don't have the sisters, which is another part of what keeps this machine running, everybody got to do their part in order for the whole nation to move forward. So the man that's carrying the water, dealing with the flyers, whatever it is, the sisters making the garments, whatever it is, all of them have to have a revolutionary mindset.
Yep. Hey, the scripture talks about that when it talks about the different parts. If everybody was the eye, where was the hearing? If everybody was the mouth, where where do you have the seeing? Right.
Something as simple as the men coming back from camp and having a meal.
Exactly. Something like that.
Yeah.
Remember, we started that.
Exactly.
Dr. Sanchez spoke about that thing too.
Yeah.
And he said, the sisters had a role. They had a stuff. The Puerto Rican nationalist movement did. Remember, we brought it out when we spoke about the Cadets of the Republic. They had the Daughters of Freedom is what they were called. The Daughters of Freedom. That's a powerful name.
We had the Daughters of Sarah.
And we got the Daughters of Sarah, which is more encompassing just that.
Right.
But they got to be in the right spirit to support that mission in the right way. So I stopped for that moment because it's important, something as simple as appearance, and this man understood that. Right. So it says his eyes were dark and piercing, his cheekbones sharp. He was not tall. I'm gonna stop here and emphasize this a lot, all right? Because he's my height. He was not tall, standing about 5 feet 4 inches. But he spoke with an electric, almost religious fervor, meaning he spoke boldly You cannot be a revolutionary up there and like Bishop Nathaniel was just say using the Joel Osteen voice.
You can't be 5'4" and not command a presence.
And not command a presence.
Yeah.
You have to be able to do that, right? It's not all about, oh, let me be a big brother, so I'm a big brother. Hey, we had a big brother, and he's a good brother. He's a good brother. He's still with us to this day.
Mm-hmm.
And that brother just did not have the spirit to read or speak boldly. You know who I'm talking about. He in New York. He with us to this day. I don't want to say his name because I don't want him to feel bad.
I'm going to think about it.
But that brother went up to read one time for me, and we were like, we gave him another shot. It was like this.
Oh, no. Come on.
Change
the subject.
And we said, raise the voice. And he said, I'll bring it out. Man,
He raised it. He went high pitch.
This dude was close to 300 pounds, if not more, like 6'2". Couldn't do it. It's not to knock appearance. The point is, it's about something more than that. All right? This dude was 5'4". He was not tall, but his presence was commanding. They called him El Maestro. They called him Master. They called him the teacher because of how he rolled and what his presence were. Why? Because he was filled with purpose for his people. That's what gave his life purpose. He understood the mission. He was there for his people. It says a murmur ran through the crowd. El Maestro, the teacher, had arrived. And he was indeed a teacher, a great pianist of ideas, about to sit at his instrument and unleash a Wagnerian fury.
That's a nice similitude.
Yeah.
His instrument was the pulpit.
His instrument was the pulpit. Yep.
Wow.
And Wagnerian is dealing with opera, some opera guy, I guess. I looked it up. I didn't know what the hell that was.
Wagnerian fury.
Yep, Wagnerian fury. He started slowly and built up a cadence. He cited history and religion.
I'm curious.
Much like what we do in our teaching platform, except what history. Listen, we document world history, but we emphasize biblical history for our people. Because guess what? World history is biblical history. Just some of it has not been written yet.
Exactly.
We're making history now in what we're doing. Elder Kanai always talks about the Acts of the Apostles. It's still happening.
Exactly.
We're doing those things now. These are elements of the revolutionary spirit.
You know why, Cap? Because I've always said this. To know where you're going, you got to know where you come from. All right. If you just believe that you were just planted here on this earth,
no purpose.
Right, no purpose. And from the moment you were planted here, a so-called quote unquote superior race controls everything. What's your purpose? You've been trained to be a follower, not a leader from the outset. The minute you come into this earth, if you don't know that you're God's chosen and you're an Israelite man and woman, you're already losing. The minute you come out into this world, you're losing because you're not in control, and it's not even supposed to be that way.
As you mentioned about the importance of purpose, all of us. All of Israel. I'll just go there. All of Israel, all the tribes. We all question in spirit. We might not say it much, but we question the reason for our existence. Recently, there's been a lot of talk about the NFL players. And the NFL have chaplains to try to keep those men in Christianity.
Right.
And so while they're playing in their career with the sports and all of that, they're preoccupied in trying to win the game and keep the sponsors and all that.
Be the best they can.
But once they retire, once they get beyond the requirements of the gridiron and the rest of it, they begin to look to themselves, after all of the glitz and all is gone, and they say, well, what is my purpose? And you can never really put that fire out. And the reason why you can't put that fire out, because the essence of knowing who you are is everything. To walk around society with question marks in your head concerning who you are, it's a horrible thing. And that's where you turn to drugs, you turn to false religion, you turn to different things to try to fill that void because your purpose is not being
right. Hey, that's a heavy
filled.
point. I'm gonna bring out one of my favorites. I bring out all the time. Let me get Daniel 9:7. Right? Because that's that the Bible calls that confusion of faces, right? But listen to how that verse starts. Go ahead. You can say something.
Yeah, well, he's getting that. And the thing is with football, those that know football, on average, you only last about 7 years in a game. So after the 7 years of your glory, right, it becomes, you look like yours, like we were talking about last night.
Right.
You look back at your career and you're like, okay, now what?
Now what?
Short of giving to charity, short of doing
did all
speaking,
of that.
and right, and not everybody can do that. Right, because let's face it, not everybody has that type of charisma to be out there and to be the face of anything.
I understand.
So now what?
Exactly.
You're still very young after 7 years.
Yeah.
And then you look at the fact of, you're not the same man you were physically because of the abuse that sport does to you.
Yep. Absolutely. Read this real quick, because you said something. It's not just a confusion of faces, but you said what happens is when you no longer have that as your drive, right? You start, basically sin comes in. You said all this other stuff, drugs and everything else comes in. Read this real quick. Daniel 9 and 7.
This is the book of Daniel, chapter 9, verse 7. O Lord, righteousness belong unto thee.
Right. And I think a lot of times we read this verse and we forget that first line.
Yeah.
He's starting that verse and he says, Lord, righteousness belong to thee, meaning all that's good and right. The world doesn't tell you that. God dictates what that is. And if God's going to give you that righteousness, which we know he only gave unto the Israelites, with that comes the identity, right? So read on. He says, but contrary, come on.
But unto us, confusion of faces.
Because we don't have an identity. So as a result of not having the identity, we have unrighteousness. This is why he starts the verse saying, righteousness belong to thee, God, but to us, confusion of faces. Because if we had our identity, we would do righteousness because we know that that's our heritage. Those are our customs. That's what we must roll with. So the role of having that purpose and an identity behind it cannot be understated. That is the foundation of our repentance.
When you have a whole system that is hell bent on keeping us from our maker, keeping us from knowing who we are, keeping us from being attached to what the Most High created us to be, it leaves you like a foster child, so to speak.
Yes.
And that's the reason why, like, you get children that grow up and they don't know who their parents were or they don't know who their father is and this and that and the other. All kind of psychological problems because they always question their existence. Who did I come from? What is my purpose?
Absolutely.
So these,
and not just your existence,
right?
And I know you notice your worth.
Exactly.
Because what you see worth in is things like, that's why so many of our young men follow to be athletes and entertainers, because that's what's conditioned to show you your worth is in this, not in being the president of the United States, right? And don't tell me Barack Obama was made president of the United States or whatever. That's all part of the shell game that they're playing to keep us in subjection, the illusion of inclusion, all right? But it's programmed to set you up to make you feel inadequate as well. Now so now you're misdirected. And again, going back to what he says, righteousness belongs to thee, but unto us confusion of faces. So what do? You start to seek glory. You start to seek seeming righteousness in the things that your oppressor has put up as noble. And it's ignoble.
Right. And then you try to find, you try to go ahead and find an identity. So you're going to cling on because people want to be around winners, right? So who's the winner in our minds? The Caucasian man.
Yeah.
Right? He runs it. Right? Let's face it. We've had that conversation, you and I. Back in the days that we were like, okay, with the suit and the briefcase and all of that. We know.
I was
same
like
thing.
that.
Right.
We all did.
Because we thought, okay, not that we wanted to be them, but we figured they had
wanted to be part of what they call the in crowd.
Right.
We wanted to be
Right.
what was known as the dominant, what they call the dom. Even the words that they use.
Yeah.
The dominant culture.
The dominant culture.
You know, or you're the mainstream. Well, if you're the mainstream, then I must be the brook on the side.
Right.
You know,
those are all psychological things that mess you
So-
up psychologically.
Hey, I could tell you, and because the truth came to me at that time, I never felt more empty in my life than when I had all that success with a closet full of suits and fine ties and, my home and my name brand sports car and all this other stuff, prestigious job as far as the world was concerned. And I was depressed.
Right.
I was depressed, empty, couldn't put my finger on it. And the Most High said, now's the time. I'm gonna reach out to you right now.
Exactly.
I'm gonna reach out to you right now. And all praises, I received it instantly. I wasn't like, what? Wait, we're not. It's not us in the Bible. I said, damn, that makes all the sense in the world. And it's not because of me. It's because the Most High allowed that understanding to open up, right? And that's when righteousness came into my life, just like many of you, because you got your identity back. And with your identity comes purpose. With that purpose comes a drive. And with that drive comes embracing what was yours because you know it was taken from you and hid from you. So you move forward in that direction. Those are the seeds of the revolutionary spirit in you. Like Bishop coined a long time ago, this is why repentance is revolutionary.
Yep.
And it's not for the weak, because this world is polluted and they program you against it daily. Daily.
Hey, just to show you how it's not for the weak, you got people that don't repent just because they can't eat a hot meal on the Sabbath.
Big time, bro. Big time.
I mean,
Yeah, I know.
I think that went over people's heads because it's something as simple as that. I remember there was a brother, he was no longer with us, but he said people are complaining that he's struggling with weed, and people complaining about of not being able to eat a pork sandwich.
Bruh.
Remember that?
Yep.
It was a while back.
Yep. I know
You
what you're
understand what I'm
talking
saying?
about.
So the bottom line is that falls with. That's why it ain't about being mighty, ain't about being huge, muscular, or none of that stuff. It's a spiritual battle, and if you can't overcome something as simple as a couple hours, you're not eating something. That's real simple.
Hey, and remember, I mean, I'm not trying to plug a class here, but I went over a class talking about what the Sabbath represents. And it represents our rest that we're going to take from all these afflictions that we're in the kingdom. So when you're contrary to what the Sabbath commands, what you're really saying is, I don't want the kingdom of heaven.
I don't want the kingdom of heaven. I'm happy to be a servant.
Right. Hey, this is why Christ said, man was made for the Sabbath, not Sabbath. I'm sorry, man was not made for the Sabbath, but Sabbath for man.
Yeah.
Because, and that's, the kingdom was made for us. That day of rest is representative of that day when we rest from all these afflictions, when it'll feel like a night terror that went away, and when laws will we make it when we wake up in that, right? So when you don't want to embrace the laws of that day, what you're saying is you're not fit for the kingdom of heaven.
Especially when the sun is simple.
Yeah. What you got, Deep? What you got? I see you cooking.
Yeah,
I see you cooking.
Just a few things that going through my mind, but we were talking. We were talking about purpose, and somebody leaving the truth because of would you say because they couldn't have that's not the reason why they left. They left because this Bible challenges you. In other words, it's we see ourselves in it, and it's showing us what's empty in us, and we don't want to go through the pain, the mental pain of discipline. Let me put it that way. We don't want to go through the discipline to concord with the Bible. We don't want to do that. Here's a case in point. Give me Isaiah 14, 1-3. Listen to this. Isaiah chapter 14.
And talk more into the mic. I'm going to increase your gain. They said,
Okay. Watch this. But I was thinking about some other scriptures, but let me read this.
It's the book of Isaiah, chapter 14, verse 1.
Yes.
For the Lord will have mercy on Jacob.
Black folk. And because, some people come into this truth thinking that it's another Christianity. They're not really taking it for what it really is. Read that again.
For the Lord will have mercy on Jacob.
For the Lord will have mercy on the 12 tribes of Israel. When you read that, you would say to yourself that, well, what people need mercy? And if you're honest, it's us.
Right.
Who caught the most hell? So these are identifying marks, our mirror showing us that the Bible's talking about us. Read.
And will yet choose Israel.
And he will yet choose Israel. So the Most High is letting us know who we are. Go ahead.
And set them in their own land.
We don't have our own land. Another identifying mark. Go ahead.
And the strangers shall be joined with them.
Go ahead.
And they shall cleave to the house of Jacob.
They're going to be made to learn this Bible in slavery. We don't want to hear that. Our people, because again, that the Most High is setting us apart. Read.
And the people shall take them and bring them to their place.
Go ahead.
And the house of Israel shall possess them in the land of the Lord.
And the house of Israel shall possess the nations. Go ahead.
For servants and handmaids.
So we're going to possess the nations for servants and handmaids. Listen to this part here. Come on.
And they shall take them captives.
And the Israelites shall take them captives. Go ahead.
Whose captives they were.
We are everybody's captives.
Right.
We're the ones in captivity.
Right.
So again, another identifying mark. So rather than me to acknowledge this, let me make an excuse to leave it. Read.
And they shall rule over their oppressors.
Who's being oppressed? That's us, the 12 tribes of Israel. Another identifying mark. Go ahead.
And it shall come to pass in the day that the Lord shall give thee rest from thy sorrow.
Who's catching hell? Who needs to get rest from sorrow? Give us rest from sorrow. Sorrow of mind, no vision, no image, no history, no love, nothing that we have for each other as a people. Go ahead.
And from thy fear.
And who's in fear? We are. Identifying marks. Go ahead.
And from the hard bondage.
How are you going to get past that? He's got to deliver us from the hard bondage. Hard bondage. Not just any kind of bondage, hard bondage. The stuff that's happening even overseas, like I talked about in the end of poverty, the situations that's happening with Northern Kingdom and their resources and all of that being stripped from them, where they can't even manufacture their own goods. Like the scripture saying in Deuteronomy, your own things will be taken away from you. That's all fitting us. So rather than to acknowledge that means that there's action that has to go along with it.
That's just it.
It puts you, once you say, yes, this is talking about me, the next question is, what do I do now? Because now I'm challenged to answer what this Bible is saying about me. But rather than me answering that, let me make an excuse to walk away from it.
That's a heavy point you make, because remember, the scripture says you're called. Right? That means that there's a call to action. When you said challenge, another way to say that is you're called.
Exactly.
Right? A sister posted an interesting comment as you were saying that. She says, yes, we've always been told we just have to believe and we can do whatever we want. When we find out it's not that easy, some of us don't want it.
Exactly.
When you find out that it's a call to action, that you're challenged to change, that you can't stay the same, you can't be the same, that you must transform your mind, right? You must be transformed by the renewing of your mind. Like it says in Romans 12:2, we make excuses to not do it. So, like, I get what you're saying.
Yeah.
So you'll make an excuse of something as simple as that.
Simple as that.
What Cat brought out to say that that's going to keep you from keeping the commandments.
I didn't want those grapes anyway.
I didn't want the Aesop's fable.
Aesop's fable.
Yeah.
I don't want those grapes
I didn't want
anyway.
them grapes anyway.
I don't
Knowing
want
damn well you wanted them.
Right, because people want things fast and easy.
Exactly.
Right, and that's what this country has done to a lot of our people.
Right.
Okay, under the guise of what they call capitalism. You understand what I'm saying? But not realizing how to anything good, nothing good comes easy. And again, the Bible talks about it from Genesis to Revelation and shows examples of how our people struggled every time they weren't doing something and action. Right? Like you always brought out, Deacon, right? Even if you're stagnant, it's still an action. You're still doing something. You're just not doing the right thing.
Right. It's amazing that you mentioned that, because there is no such thing as true stagnation when you're talking about people in the spirit. Because it's like I gave the example a while back. You leave a glass of water on the table, or lemonade or whatever it is. You leave it there for 3 years, or it's stagnant in terms of it not going anywhere.
It stayed there.
But the forces of bacteria will contaminate that water and take it in the opposite direction to destroy it. That's what happens. That's what happens to us in the spirit. If we're not working towards disciplining ourselves and perfecting ourselves according to the Bible, you just simply calling yourself being stagnant. The spirits of demons and evil and wicked thoughts is going to take you what they call idle
and consume.
You're not really idle per se. The idleness brings wickedness.
It's a misnomer.
Right, exactly. Your idleness is going to become contaminated, and you're going into.
And you're going backwards.
You're going backwards.
You're going backwards.
It's only positive. There's only two forces: positive and negative. There's no middle force.
Hey, that's. Or like Yoda said in Star Wars, there is no try. You do or you do not.
Exactly.
And but it's true. Hey, so listen, this is a real simple example. I can try to touch this water bottle or I can't.
Right. There's no in between.
There's no in between.
That's the point.
I grab it or I don't.
Right.
So try.
Right.
Not really. Same thing. Stagnant. Not really. It's not really a thing.
Exactly.
It's not really a thing.
Right.
Because in reality, what you do is you go backward with that idleness, with that stagnation, so on and so forth.
Right. Idleness gives evil a chance to gain on you and take you back into evil.
You do or you do not. Stagnant is there for people who want to make it seem, that's like maybe. Right? Yay or nay? There's no maybe. Not really a maybe.
Well, it's interesting you said that, because that's what the Bible says. Let your answer be yay or nay.
Yeah.
Because you know what? There's no in between.
There is no in between.
You know there's no in between.
Exactly.
When we do councils and we talk, hey, yay or nay, or we ask you, You know there's no in between.
Maybe means I haven't decided
Yeah.
Right.
yet. Which
Or maybe means I did it, but
right.
no,
right.
you still that but still would nothing good comes after if or but. Those
Right.
two conjunctions.
Yeah.
Nothing good ever
nothing
comes
good,
out of that.
Nothing good comes after that.
You know, it was amazing. 'Cause I know we want to definitely continue with this, but
Yeah,
I was
go
thinking
ahead, Dick.
about
Go
when you
ahead.
had Dr. Sanchez
Sanchez.
on, and he mentioned about committed butt.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Oh, that's right. You said you were going to talk about that.
Yeah.
Committed butt.
Yes.
Because he was saying that people get weak
Yep.
in organizations. Anything that deals with making change, people are excited in the beginning because it's exciting, the novelty of it being.
That's
I'm
exactly
part of
what it
this,
is. It's
such
the
and such.
novelty of it.
But once that begins to wear off, and then the trials come in, now it's a challenge to how much do I love this truth? How much do I love this mission? And people begin to get weak. Okay,
Yep.
so when he mentioned committed, but I like that term.
Hey, I like to say this is a "What have you done for God lately?"
Exactly.
truth. Not what you did 2 years ago, 3 years ago, right? Not even what you did yesterday. What have you done for the Most High lately?
Exactly.
What have you done for your people lately, right? To move forward, right? People get weak. He said it exactly like
Yeah,
that. He goes,
he
people
said
they get weak
and
they leave. He goes, but there's certain things you see in certain people, and you know that's a committed
Exactly.
butt, right? A
Exactly.
committed
It was
butt.
heavy. It was
Yep.
heavy.
That was a good point.
Yep.
So let's jump back into the book. All praises, all praises. So it says we left off at where it says how he spoke. So it says he cited history and religion. Oh, and he was 5'4".
5'4".
That's my height.
Yeah.
That's my height. You don't gotta be tall, right? For all you brothers out there that's always getting on my height. All right. It's 5'4". So he said he cited history and religion, culture and tradition. It started to rain, but no one left the square. Albizu spoke to the people for 2 hours about their work, their land, and their island. He recited Puerto Rico, Puerto Pobre, a poem by Pablo Neruda. When he finished, a crowd of 6,000 applauded for over 5 minutes and asked him to lead the workers through the bitter sugarcane strike. The next business day, El Imparcial ran his entire speech on its front page. Albizu and the sugarcane workers formed the Asociación de Trabajadores de Puerto Rico, the Workers Association of Puerto Rico, and he negotiated on their behalf with the sugar corporations and the government. Watch now. Albizu and nationalist organizers spoke personally in many towns, including Arecibo, Fajardo, Bayamón, Humacao, Rio Piedras, Yabucoa, and Salinas. Alarmed U.S. corporations formed a Citizens Committee of 1,000 for the preservation of peace and order and cabled President Franklin Roosevelt in a panic about anarchy through the island because he was inspiring them to stand up for themselves, right? And letting them know that they did have power to act and affect change in what was going on.
Yeah, unity.
Unity, as long as we were united. It says a few days after the speech, during a meeting with Wanica cane workers, Albizu received a phone call. It was Colonel E. Francis Riggs. This is where he got on the radar. That's why I say that speech and the actions after it was that milestone that we were speaking about in the beginning.
Exactly.
He was the police chief of Puerto Rico. He called him, inviting Albizu Campos to lunch at the El Escambron Beach Club. Albizu agreed to meet, then quickly hung up. He had already heard about Riggs, the heir to the Riggs National Bank fortune. Now we got to get a little background of who he was going to meet with, right? So remember how I said there's certain moments that you look at in milestones, and we were talking about how not only were they moments that we move your revolution forward, but it's the moment that you add enemies and targets on your back with that as well. And not like you said, not the enemies of the traitors within us.
No.
We're talking about the big brother.
Right.
Big brother, right? That's the way we're there.
Yeah.
That's who comes in. That who comes into play. And if you don't know what I mean by big brother, because you're a millennial, that means the government start watching you, they're monitoring you, and they're trying to trip you up. All right, so that you can understand that thing.
Bring it out.
So he says, the Riggs National Bank headquarters at 1503-1505 Pennsylvania Avenue Northwest was right across the street from the Treasury Department and a few hundred feet from the White House. To let you know the influence and pull of the people that he caught their attention, the enemies.
That was by design that it was in that location.
Yep. The bank, well, I was going to explain that. The bank loaned the U.S. government $16 million in 1840. Because remember, we were on the gold standard back then. They weren't printing money yet. When did that go away? Like 40s, right? After the Great Depression.
Under Roosevelt.
Right. The gold standard went away, and it went on the full faith and credit of the U.S. government after that. So meaning they had limits. So they went to wealthy. So you think that this government is not run by wealthy influencers? You don't understand your history. You wonder, where's this national debt to? You ever ask yourself, who do they owe this debt to? Where is this number that they put out?
The debt flying, scrolling across the building.
Who do they owe that to?
Every second is
who they got to write that check to?
Right. It's not a real check they got to write. It's favors. It's influence they got to return back from the rulers of darkness of this place that helped profit this place up and set them up. All right? That's where that comes from. So he says the bank loaned the U.S. government $16 million in 1847 for a war against Mexico and $7.2 million in 1868 for the purchase of Alaska. Millions in the 1800s is probably the equivalent of billions today. So you can understand the indebtedness that we're talking about here. 14 U.S. presidents or their families had banked at Riggs, including Abraham Lincoln and Ulysses S. Grant. As the largest bank in Washington, D.C., with branches throughout the United States, England, Germany, and the Bahamas, Riggs specialized in private international banking for wealthy clients and embassy banking for 95% of the foreign ministries and embassies located in Washington. This was the man. This was the proverbial man that this little 5'4" man caught his attention. All right. He lays this foundation to let you know the peril that he was in. And again, as we continue to chronicle his life and future, because we won't get all to it today, as we continue to chronicle his life, you're going to see why he was such a problem, this guy.
You know what, this is an example? I'm sorry, Deacon.
No, go.
Because you've always brought this up. When Pharaoh in the movie 10 Commandments asked Moses, what do they believe?
Yeah.
Those 6,000 people that stood for 2 hours in the rain and clapped for 5 minutes, they believed.
That's a problem.
That's a problem. This little dude right here,
that's a problem.
With all that education and learned our system, is a problem.
Hey, it reminded me of Moses. He was learning all the ways of the Egyptians.
Right.
And then took that and used it for the benefit of his people.
But, keeping in the theme of what we was talking about with imagery and the thought of the revolution in thought, to turn it around, to bring in action. And give me, I know you were going somewhere.
No, go ahead,
Give me Ecclesiastes 7:7. I was thinking about this.
I was gonna bring that out later, but go ahead, bring it out now.
Okay.
Yeah, I got it. I got it as a note. I got it as a note for after the meeting.
Okay.
I have it as a note for after the meeting.
Leave it then.
You gonna leave? Okay, all right. I got it as a note. You in the spirit. You know what it is. Yeah. You Deacon Yawasap, so you're already 2 pages ahead without having read the book. Hey, that's the truth. Look. Don't I got it right here?
Well, all praise to the Most High.
Okay, you got it.
That makes me feel good because I know I was in the spirit and on the right track because he already going there.
But going to what Captain Aparian brought up about Pharaoh, that was making the point about do the Hebrews believe? That's the whole point about revolution in thought.
Yeah.
Once they set up headquarters in your head to do nothing, you ain't got to worry about nothing. Yep. But once the thinking changed, as a man thinketh, once the thinking changed, anything can go.
That's why, Deacon, they sent Big Boy.
Yeah.
See, because they had their little minions there,
right?
And they reported back to Big Boy, right. Mr. Riggs, right? And Mr. Riggs said he has too many believers.
Exactly.
Yep. They're believing in this thing.
Right.
They said they cabled the president over this guy.
Cable, that means that it was right away.
Because because they had the little wires, right? So they
were like, as he was talking, they were like, we got a problem.
Right. Right. Yeah. They said, hey, urgent, post haste. We must address this. Right? When you see them whole movies and they send the cable, post haste. Right. We must address it. There's a straight haired nigga here stirring things up. Let's get on this, President. Right? So it says throughout Central America, the Riggs National Bank was suspected of laundering money for right-wing dictators, bribing entire legislatures, destabilizing populist regimes, and financing military coups. I know there's another one of your favorites. You always talk about what they did down in Panama and their influence and all that stuff. They finance military coups disguised as revolutions on behalf of the United Fruit Company. I put a little note. We've gone over this. The School of the Americas. They call it something else today. I can't remember the name now because they wanted you to forget the influence that they had in the region. The School of the Americas' sole goal was to influence all the other countries in this side of the world to their agenda. So that to set up headquarters, I'll take a line from you, in all these countries' minds.
Yeah.
That's what they were there for.
You know when this happened? Gaddafi. Because Gaddafi was having his people believe that we don't need the United States. We can have our own currency.
They did it to...
this is what this is.
They did it. They did it in Venezuela.
They heard that speech, right?
They did it
with Chavez. Chavez said the same thing.
You're seeing a modern day thing of that now. They're dealing. Hey, and you know what? They're not backing his opponent anymore because it didn't go exactly as planned.
It went bad.
Yeah,
that whole thing went bad.
Well, I mean, we know there's more powers that be, but Trump fumbled it. Right, because it was under his administration. So he fumbled whatever the directives were that they gave him to do that stuff.
He fumbled it.
Right, and now they're not supporting the opposition guy. But that don't mean it's over. They're gonna because they're not gonna leave this Chavez in office there. They're gonna find somebody else to deal with that stuff. They're not gonna forget that thing ain't over. Their eyes will go back to that in a little bit. So it says now in 1934, within weeks of an island-wide labor strike, the president of this bank had sent a special envoy, his own son, as the chief of police of Puerto Rico. This friendly neighborhood cop with millions of dollars and thousands of armed men at his disposal had just invited Albizu for a sit-down. El Escambrón Beach Club was Puerto Rico's most spectacular private resort. It is Mar-a-Lago. The restaurant sat on the water's edge with breathtaking views of El Morro, Fort San Cristobal, and the San Juan beachfront. A horseshoe-shaped boardwalk extended out over the water, right into the ocean, to create the largest outdoor pool in the world. Letting you know that he was not in a home. That even though this place was in Puerto Rico, this was their little paradise in Puerto Rico, right? All these details are important so you can understand what he was walking into.
On his land.
Because you deal with that feeble mind that sees this, and you will get enticed by this stuff. And you be like, damn, this is how these guys live. I want some of this. It'll break that revolutionary spirit, leading up to when we get to that Ecclesiastes 7 and 7 and so on, right? It was staged. He could have met him anywhere. Why did he meet him there?
Because imagery is everything.
The imagery is everything.
He wanted him to see that.
Right. He wanted to entice him.
You know what he wanted to let him know? You see, I'm in charge, right? On your land, your island.
This could be you.
Yep.
Yes, that's exactly what it was.
He did a Sosa and Tony Montana.
That's what it was.
That's what he
That's
did.
what it was from Scarface. He showed him all that. So he says on January 18th, 1934,
That's a good one.
as he walked into El Escambrón, Albizu noticed many U.S. Navy officers in this beach club, several local businessmen, 2 members of the Puerto Rican Senate, and Fay Ray, the Canadian-American actress, most famous for playing the female lead in 1933's King Kong.
You know what that was about.
Yep, they was lining it up for him. Riggs sat at a corner table in military regalia. Appearance is everything. He was dressed up in a white tunic with gold buttons, large epaulets, and a splash of medals on his chest.
He was letting him know, don't get comfortable because I'm in charge.
He shook Albizu's hand heartily. In a flurry of busboys, waiters, and sommeliers, they ate a splendid lunch and discussed the Golden Gate Bridge, the Spanish Civil War, Noel Coward's design for living, and Joe DiMaggio's hitting streak. Everything but the sugar strike. Their waiter spoke English and listened attentively. Finally, Riggs came to the point. He asked Albizu what he thought about Luis Muñoz Marin. Remember, that's the one that they called in to take the Senate seat. That he was moving for. Like I said, that guy has his own history. Laws will eventually go over it. To whom the nationalists had recently lost the Senate election. Then he offered to donate $150,000. Don't know this guy from a hole in the wall. He heard about the speech. He heard about how he was rallying and uniting the people.
Buy him off.
And they went in early. They went in early and hard. Listen to everything they offered him. Then he offered to donate $150,000 to the Nationalist Party to ensure that Albizu won the Senate seat that year or in 1936. And to make Albizu governor of Puerto Rico within 10 years' time. Millard Tydings, a good friend who owed Riggs a few favors, was about to chair the U.S. Senate Committee on Territories and Insular Affairs. Tydings could sponsor a bill allowing Puerto Rico to elect her own governor, and Riggs could ensure that Albizu got the job. So he was tempting him even with a little bit of the freedom that he wanted. Right? Remember, Bo, what they didn't remember about this guy was that he said he was rallying for the unconditional return of the island. Not give me a little, right? Don't set me up as a figurehead here, and I still got a pander.
Because that's what it was going to
pander
be.
to you guys and pander to Big Brother.
Set me up.
That's what it was going to be.
In exchange, Albizu would back down and let Riggs take care of the strike. If Albizu refused the deal, Riggs would take the offer to Munoz Marin. Albizu rose slowly, thanked Riggs for lunch, and told Puerto Rico was not for sale, at least not by him. Man, that thing was, my hair stood up on that because, man, that's a strong spirit, man. That you want to talk about committed, but
right. That's what Christ told Satan.
Right.
When he showed him all the kingdoms of the world at once.
Damn.
That is exactly what he said.
That's exactly
man
what
cannot live by bread alone.
He said, no, man.
He said, nope.
If you would only bow down and worship me, all this could be yours
Yep.
because it's given to me.
Yep. Hey, and you know what? Obviously, there's a lot that goes into why Christ said no, but Christ knew that he was going to be the king of a greater kingdom, one that would not fail.
Right.
Albizu understood that too. Because remember, his upbringing and what he saw when he was in America made him realize, I can't roll with these dudes.
Right.
This is why it had to be unconditional. Give us our independence without your involvement at all, because the stuff you do decays us. The stuff you do stagnates us, right? Which is really decay.
You know what's heavy about that? Because, I'm sure that there's thousands of our people that were bribed, that they sought to bribe. That's not in history books. Just ordinary brothers and sisters that would not sell out. And they did not know what we know in terms of the Bible, like what we was talking about with Christ. Christ knew that he was going to get it all and all that. And we know that because we know the prophecies. But a lot of our brothers and sisters back in those times, they did not know that when they could just go in there in the Bible and find it.
Yep.
But in their spirit, they know that it's not right to sell out. And that's what makes us a special people.
Right.
That's in us. We don't just gravitate towards evil because we know that there's a day of reckoning.
Yes.
That's the spirit that the Most High put in us.
Hey,
and they don't even have this here. But that little inertial spirit of knowing that there is a day of reckoning. That if I just go out and just do that.
And that's what differentiates a revolutionary spirit from a pretender. That's what initiates somebody who's in it for the novelty.
Exactly.
That's what differentiates somebody who replaces Christianity or whatever denomination you were in with this, and somebody who's really out there being revolutionary for his people, for his or her people, right? So now I want to get Ecclesiastes 7:7, because what the way I looked at this, and you might have a different way you want to bring this out, Deke. The way I looked at this was they knew these tactics, and this is why the Most High has several scriptures that deal with gifts, because it was actually a law. I got some precepts in Exodus and in Deuteronomy that it was a law not to receive gifts in these type of matters, because it knew it would skew your judgment in dealing with matters.
Exactly.
So my point is they enticed them with this because not just how profound it was that he walked away from that, not being a biblical man as far as knowing the scriptures, right? That's profound in and of itself, all right, with all that was around him in temptation, but that they knew exactly what to offer this guy. They offered him almost everything he wanted, but it was still with them in charge. So let's get Ecclesiastes 7:7 real quick.
This the book of Ecclesiastes, chapter 7, verse 7. Surely oppression maketh a wise man mad.
And Puerto Rico is oppressed to this day, and even more so then. And this made him mad. Not just insane like Deep Bears out. He was angry. This is why he was able to speak with the fervor that it spoke about. This is why he was able to walk away from this. Because he wasn't going to let this little carrot that they dangled in front of him. All right. Remember, he saw all this stuff in Boston and Harvard and all these things and all the way they lived. He understood what Riggs was about and what their banks were about. He went to Cuba, Panama, Venezuela, all these countries.
Ireland.
To
see how he saw things.
He saw and he knew. They thought they knew who they were messing with, but they didn't know who they were messing with. They knew that, and this is why eventually they resorted to, we can't win this guy over, so we got to break him. And we can't kill him because then we make him a martyr. So we're going to lock him away and torture him till people forget about him. And people have forgot about him to this day because not even Dr. Sanchez really knew about this guy.
The hell is this?
Not even he knew about this stuff. A lot of people don't understand. Yes, we did have revolutionaries. It's in our people. It's the same type of spirit that was in our Israelite forefathers to be revolutionary and rise up and fight against these powers that be. Like the scripture says, who's going to fight and rise up against me, against these evildoers?
Hey, and check this out. Esau is so deep in their thoughts. The same way they took out the most powerful ruling Edomite empire from the Bible, that's exactly what they did with this man. Because again, that's their history. What we just experienced and just read about here, that's their history. They're proud about this. This has been passed on to generations, this man. But it's been buried. Like we were talking about last night, about the Puerto Rico, the Flame of Resistance.
Yep.
Their worst, they have to bury things.
They got to play whack-a-mole.
They got to play whack-a-mole.
Any thread of truth coming up could just wreck everything. So they got to run all over the earth trying to make sure that a piece of truth don't pop up.
That's a great example. That's a great example. It's whack-a-mole for them.
Hey, that's why they went in early.
Yeah.
They went in early on this guy. He hadn't even accomplished anything yet. They just saw the stirrings and rumblings of him uniting the people. And that made them come with this offer. Read the rest of this verse.
And a gift destroyeth the heart.
They know this. They know this. They knew that. They said, we're going to take him off his game. We're going to offer him a gift. We're going to give him all this. And, hey, you could get with Faye Ray, who's over there in the corner. Right?
Bruh.
That's how they rolled with that thing. Let me get Exodus 23:8. Exodus 23:8. This was a law for our people. All right? This was a law for our people. All right, Solomon mentions it here in Ecclesiastes, but why? He didn't just pull that out the air. He understood this. Go ahead, read.
This is the book of Exodus, chapter 23, verse 8. And thou shalt take no gift.
Thou shalt take no gift. Why? Come on.
For the gift blindeth the wise.
The gift blindeth the wise. So I like this precept because it expounds more on what Ecclesiastes 7:7 says biblically. When it says it destroyeth the heart, he gives more details here. It says, for the gift blindeth the wise. It was a commandment that we should not take the gift because it blinds the wise. Come on.
And preserveth.
And perverteth
the words of the righteous.
And it will pervert your words. That's the perversion of words that happen when these people get into Senate seats, when they get into, it's Trick Baby. It's that scene from Trick Baby. Exactly. You target the most intelligent of them and don't let them do for their people. And you bring them into subjection to our thoughts and our ways. And he says in that scene, and for all intents and purposes, he's one of us. For all intents and purposes, he's one of us. This is why it's so important that we do not let gifts destroy the heart. Let me get Deuteronomy 16:19. All right, let's expound on it a little more. Deuteronomy 16:19.
This is the book of Deuteronomy, chapter 16, verse 19. Thou shalt not wrest judgment. Thou shalt not respect persons. Neither take a gift, for a gift does blind the eyes of the wise and pervert the words of the righteous.
So this one says in the last verses, it says the same thing we read in Exodus, but it talks about not respecting persons and not resting judgment. Because why? A result of taking that gift will wind up making you err in your judgment. You'll rest judgment. You won't judge wisely. And what does it do? It puts a respect of person spirit on you and how you roll in this. One more, Proverbs 15:27.
And this is the laws.
Right.
These are laws.
Right.
These are not suggestions. Because the end result never turns out good if you go contrary to this.
Right. And it's good you say the end result, because guess what? With Proverbs 15:27 going to talk about one of the results of that.
This is the book of Proverbs, chapter 15, verse 27. He that is greedy of gain.
Greedy of gain. Greedy of gain. They allured him at the beach club. They showed him all this stuff. He dressed in all this regalia. They offered him all this stuff because they said, he's an animal. He's going to be greedy of gain. We can take this guy over, right? It says, he that is greedy of gain, what happens?
Troubleth his own house.
Troubleth his own house. They knew if they got him in the pocket, Remember, based on all that financing, this was the reason we read that whole history of what the Riggs Bank was about was to let you know that this was standard operating procedure for them. This is how they dealt with revolutionaries. This is how they dealt with people that they didn't want in office. This is how they maintained their power. They offer you a little something. Listen, like we always bring out, if you have a cracker and then you put some cheese on that cracker, you think you on the come up. And what they offer you is never going to be the same seat at the table as them. They give you crumbs. It's still crumbs. Read on.
But he that hateth gifts shall live.
Why? Because you'll have your identity. You'll have your purpose. You'll have your drive. You'll be that committed butt.
Mm-hmm.
And the life that it's talking about is that eternal life. You will obtain the kingdom of heaven because you're going to fight for it. You're going to live right for it. That's that righteousness that belongeth unto God. You will not get confused with your face. A result of taking this and taking those bribes would have destroyed everything. Would have destroyed everything. Now, we understand the Most High had this set up for a certain reason. So while they made some strides in Puerto Rico, ultimately, it's still a colony to this day, right? And they were very successful at hampering his legacy, but this is why it's important that we bring things like this out and then reference the scriptures so we can see the difference is we're on the side of a fixed fight. We do this way, the way the Most High God says how we need to roll and do it. We know that victory is assured. Maybe not in our lifetime, but as far as in this present one that we're in, but we know that victory is assured. We know that victory is assured.
See, Esau understands there's power in words, right? There's power in words, okay? Something as simple as the pursuit of happiness makes somebody who don't have anything, but let's face it, this is theirs right now, right? It's all there. Makes the mere person, meaning us, right? Because again, like you've met, it's only positive and negative, right? Good and bad, yin yang, right? Okay, Jacob and Esau.
Right, exactly.
That's what life is all about.
Exactly.
All the other nations, they just playing supporting actors.
Right.
In this,
they're gonna either follow when the wicked is ruling, they're gonna follow the wicked.
Right.
When we rule, they're gonna have to bow
absolutely.
down.
There's no two ways about it. That's all it is. So the mere fact that they will present things like this, they understand. They've already conditioned us that you're not gonna get things easy, but we can give it to you easy, just like you brought out, like Satan and the encounter with Christ.
That was an excellent. That was fire right there when you brought that out. I see you were jotting stuff down, so go ahead, Deke.
Well, the gift, that part in there about what the gift do, that Proverbs you was reading in 15.
Proverbs 15:27.
Yeah.
This the book of Proverbs, chapter 15, verse 27. He that is greedy of gain troubleth his own house.
Read.
But he that hateth gifts.
That part right there. He that hateth gifts. The question is it truly a gift? Or is it a means to blind you from the reality?
Right.
That's what it is. It's not a gift.
Nope.
It is a subterfuge that blinds you from the reality, and it causes you to misrepresent reality of oppression. When all of a sudden you ain't oppressed no more, because the acknowledgement of oppression will drive you to revolutionary thinking. And that's the reason why go back to that Ecclesiastes. That's the point that I want to make about it. That Ecclesiastes, that's the reason why it says what it says here. Surely oppression. You got it?
Yes, sir.
Read
This
it.
the book of Ecclesiastes, chapter 7, verse 7. Surely oppression.
He didn't say maybe, because the reality of oppression, you feeling it, and it is put on you to drive you to retool your thinking. Read it.
Surely oppression maketh a wise man mad.
A wise man is going to take his anger for the oppression and turn it into revolutionary organizational structuring and moving forward, because he wants to get from under the reality of oppression, which the gift was trying to blind him from it. And he said, I'm not taking that. I understand I'm in captivity. This is the reason why I'm in captivity, and this is what I need to do to get out of captivity. And the wise in me is gonna cause me to follow these scriptures, because this is my ticket out.
Right. Hey, I want to read a line from last week. It was page 113. If you don't have it, it's fine. After he went through all this stuff, right? I'll read a few sentences here. Remember, it said he traveled around. He volunteered to. Oh, that's the other part we forgot. He volunteered to enlist in to fight in World War I. This guy learned a lot about his enemy, right? It says when he got back from all of that, from everything he saw and everything he witnessed, he went back to law school in 1919. It says Albizu had made a decision because he saw all this oppression, right? Like what you're bringing out now, Deke. And he said no matter how many degrees he earned or how many times the people at Harvard patted him on the head, he would never be one of them. The United States would never take him, his people, or his homeland seriously. In fact, the Americans couldn't even spell or pronounce his island's name. So to give meaning and purpose to his own life, Albizu devoted himself to the cause of Puerto Rican independence. The oppression drove him to have meaning and purpose in his life that drove him to fight for his people.
That's a revolutionary. That's a person that loves his people. That the gifts were not going to rule his heart.
Exactly.
That hateth gifts, like Proverbs 15:27 says. That's a person that hateth gifts.
That's the reason why Hosea 5:15. Get me that. That's why it says what it says there, because it's another example of what oppression will do. The Most High uses it. It's purposeful.
Yep.
This is the book of Hosea, chapter 5, verse 15. I will go and return to my place till they acknowledge their offense.
Why he said that he will go to his place until we acknowledge our offense? Because at the moment, we're thinking that we have the gift. We ain't feeling the oppression, so to speak, as the way the verse is panning out. Read.
And
Continue.
seek my face.
We're going to seek God's face.
In their affliction.
In their oppression. In their oppression. He openeth their ears in oppression. Like the other scripture said.
A broken and contrite spirit he will not despise.
Right. So read.
In their affliction, they will seek me early.
We will retool our minds and say, Lord, what do we need to do to get out of this? Because this reality of oppression is too much. But if somebody's going to give me a gift to make me think that I'm not in oppression, then I won't look for a solution. Why go to the hospital if you're not sick?
Right.
Hey.
Or believe you're not sick.
Right, exactly. Exactly. That's the whole point. Because, or believe you're not oppressed. You are oppressed, but you're told that you're not oppressed.
Hey, with that point, let me get Hosea 3 and 4. I brought this out in last week's class when we were breaking down the prodigal son. We're going to read 4 and 5, right? Because verse 5 is the point, right, of what Deep just said, where he says the Most High uses that oppression to drive the behaviors that he needs in us. So watch this, Hosea 3 and 4.
This is the book of Hosea, chapter 3, verse 4. For the children of Israel shall abide many days without a king.
He left, correct? He said, I'm gonna leave you with no comfort. I'm gonna leave you with nothing, right? Because y'all need to get mad. You need to be able to be driven into something. You cannot see your oppression, though it covers you thickly all around you. Come on.
And without a prince, and without a sacrifice, and without an image, and without an ephod, and without a teraphim.
But then he says, what happens after all that? As a result of that, come on.
Afterward shall the children of Israel return.
After that affliction, they will return. Come on.
And seek the Lord their God.
And seek the Lord. It drove us to seek the Lord, to repent, to acknowledge who we were, and to fight for him. Come on.
And David their king, and shall fear the Lord and his goodness in the latter days.
And that's what you're seeing now as you see us come together.
Right.
Those are the forces that he uses to drive. Like Deacon said, he don't say maybe, he says surely.
Right.
It's going to drive you mad. And in Hosea 3 and 5 says, and afterwards, you're going to seek the Lord again. You're going to come to your senses. You're going to reform your minds. And you're going to do what you need to do to fight for your people. Go ahead. I see you flipping pages, D.
No, I'm just looking at different things.
You're taking notes so you don't forget your thoughts and all that.
Yeah, I do that. I do that.
Oh, man.
We're talking about, like I mentioned earlier, milestones. And when I look at Ezekiel 37, and I look at that verse in 16 and 17, that's the Most High taking things to the next level.
Yep.
I got to read that. Give it to me.
This is the book of Ezekiel, chapter 37, verse 16. Moreover, thou son of man, take thee one stick, and write upon it for Judah, and for the children of Israel his companions.
Go ahead.
Then take another stick, and write upon it for Joseph, the stick of Ephraim, and for the house of Israel his companions.
So go ahead.
And join them one to another into one stick.
So that's the Most High saying that he's going to bring the tribes together. But he said he's going to bring these two sticks together. Yes, go ahead, read on.
And they shall become one in thy hand.
And those two sticks come one in thine hand for the people to see. That's the tribes.
Right.
The Most High is bringing that's that milestone that the Most High is bringing.
Yep.
And he's going to bring that information out even more. This particular chapter, because I was going over this not too long ago, when you read about the Valley of the Dry Bones, this parallels with Revelation 11, the 11th chapter. That's this is talking about these times here. So when I talk about milestone, I'm talking about where we are in time now. Let me prove that. Go to Revelation. Go to Revelation. Because this what we just read here is the tribes, the sign. A lot of people talk about chart. Charts is something that somebody could make up or whatever. I don't like that word. I like the word that the Most High used. Sign. Meaning let the people know, like he said, that these curses shall be upon thee for a sign. To let when you go and you trace the events and the curses and the situations that happen according to Genesis 49, it pinpoints who these tribes are. And those curses that pinpoint us is supposed to be on us for a sign. And that's what the Most High is causing Ezekiel to see in the spirit. Revelation 11 and the 8th verse.
This is the book of Revelations, chapter 11, verse 8. And their dead bodies shall lie in the street of the great city.
This is paralleling with Ezekiel 37. They got precepts in these Bibles to indicate that that's exactly what it's talking about. Go ahead.
Which spiritually is called Sodom and Egypt.
Which is spiritually called Sodom and Egypt. So now this is Revelation. Jump down to the 11th verse.
Verse 11. And after 3 days and a half, the spirit of life from God entered into them, and they stood upon their feet, and great fear fell upon them which saw them.
Now, this is going to pinpoint what time period we're in to let you know that what I read about the tribes coming together, about the valley of the dry bones, like when you read 37 and 10, so I prophesied that he commanded me, and the breath came into them, and they lived. So read on. Where you at?
Verse 12. And they heard a great voice from heaven saying unto them, Come up hither. And they ascended up to heaven in a cloud.
So that's coming up. Keep reading.
And their enemies beheld them. And the same hour was there a great earthquake, and the 10th part of the city fell.
That's America.
And in the earthquake were slain of men 7,000. And the remnant were affrighted.
Go ahead.
And gave glory to the God of heaven.
Here's the verse I want right here.
The second woe is past.
The Second World War is already past, letting you know where we are in time. Listen to what it's going to say right here.
And behold, the third woe cometh quickly.
Wars. This is about to go down.
It's at our doorstep.
It's at our doorstep. So between the Second World War and the rumors of the final war, all the Most High is going to cause Ezekiel 37 to fulfill.
So wow, that's basically the back behind the scenes. Wow, that's going on.
Well, that's going on. The Most High is. That's why I said this show is monumental. This is the Most High is doing it that way, and he's going to turn it up right on this.
Yep.
He's going to turn up. He's going to turn up what's happening with this platform. The Most High going to cause Ephraim and them tribes to really come on into the street.
Yeah. Yep. Hey, let me get Zechariah 9 and 12 on that same.
Finish him.
12 and 13. Man. Zechariah 9, start at 12.
This is the book of Zechariah, chapter 9, verse 12. Turn you to the stronghold, ye prisoners of hope.
Right? We are prisoners of hope because we are in captivity. You must wake up and realize you're in that oppression, all right? That's what's going to drive that so-called black and brown unity that we went over a couple weeks ago, right? You got to realize that we in that oppression together. We in the same boat together. And in this time frame that the deacon just brought out, we must come together and come together with a mission. Not come together with LGBTQ, not come together in Black Lives Matter, not come together behind Biden, behind far left, far right, whatever it is. Come together. The stronghold is this Bible, is God's laws, statutes, and commandments. Come on.
Even today do I declare that I will render double unto thee.
Read on.
When I have bent Judah for me.
Come on.
Filled the bow with Ephraim.
That's what Deacon's talking about. That's what you're seeing now.
That's what's happening now.
Judah set
We're
it
in
off.
prophecy now.
We would not have been able to be the arrow without Judah to propel us forward. That's why I say it was you that put the spirit on us to do this show.
That was the Most High.
It says, all praise to the Most High. And he said, I have been Judah for me. He's talking about a bow, and filled the bow with Ephraim. Come on.
And raised up thy sons, O Zion.
And raised up thy sons. During that time period, we are coming back to our remembrance, that valley of dry bones, the skin coming upon us. Come on.
Against thy sons, O Greece.
Because that's who the oppressor is. Part of the revolution is to know who the target of your revolution is. And it ain't us. We must stop that disunity amongst ourselves and come together under this stronghold. Because it says we shall come together against Greece. Come on.
And made thee as the sword of a mighty man.
Putting us strong together, one stick strong, being able to bring out this truth.
Hey, now you mentioned about thy sons, O Greece. Go back to Revelation to continue from where we was reading. 14 and 15. Listen to this to go exactly with what you just said.
You want me to start at verse
14?
14. This is the book of Revelation, chapter 11, verse 14. The second woe is past.
I covered that already. The Second World War is past. Go ahead.
And behold, the third woe cometh quickly.
The Third World War is at the brink. Go ahead.
Verse 15. And the seventh angel sounded, and there were great voices in heaven, saying, the kingdom of this world are become the kingdoms of our Lord.
Esau is the end of the world, and Jacob is the beginning of the world that cometh. That's what we read in here.
That's right.
So that's letting you know we're at that time. So that prophecy that you read earlier about he would bend Judah, right? That's going along with what we read here.
Yeah, that's the sons of Greece right there.
That's it right there.
And you know what's amazing, that he used a bow and an arrow.
Yeah.
One cannot work without the other.
Yeah.
Yep.
It cannot accomplish what it fully needs to be accomplished without the other.
And the Most
Just
High
like the one stick can't do it.
Exactly. The Most High is talking about unity, and that unity begins with thought. The Most High need this to be retooled. That's what repentance is about.
Yeah.
Having your mind renewed in this.
And that's a transformation.
Yeah, the transformation. And a
By
lot
the
of people
renewing
run
your
from
mind.
that.
They run from the transformation part.
Exactly.
You're right. Hey, there'll be people in this walk 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 10 years and have not been transformed.
Exactly.
They won't let
100%.
themselves.
Exactly.
They're resisting it.
They're just making it hot in here.
They're resisting the transformation. You're just making it hotter.
Just making it hot in here. You know?
Exactly. You're just making it hot up in here. Adding more heat. Goodness gracious. We definitely got more to go into. The results of that Riggs meeting, all right, led to the FBI detail. He was on the map. We're going to talk more about that, Lord's will, next week, all right? For the sake of time, we're going to cut that short. I pray y'all been enjoying the journey through these revolutionary spirits that we've been bringing out, highlighting the Northern Kingdom revolutionary spirits in that aim that maybe we'll touch those people, those brothers and sisters out there that need to wake up, from both kingdoms, Southern and Northern Kingdom, right? To be able to see that we are the same people. There were people of the Northern Kingdom that have the same spirit to want to fight and rise up against those sons of Greece, except now we understand that our warfare is that spiritual warfare, and we must do it by the application of these laws.
It's a beautiful thing when you can look into this Bible and you can see yourselves in it. And we see that the Most High is working with us. I'm not speaking against other camps or anything like that, but it's an honor to be able to see where you are in God's prophecy, to see that the milestones that he's causing to wake our people up and to be a part of it and to actually acknowledge that it's actually happening. That's purpose. That's purpose that you want to be a part of.
It's sobering, too.
It's sobering.
It keeps that sober mind, right? That a sober spiritually, right? Looking forward, pressing towards that mark, like Paul says. And that's what's going to keep you pressing towards that mark, filled with purpose. Filled with purpose so that you can continue to move forward. Then you stop making excuses and you make things happen when you're filled with purpose.
Let me Deuteronomy 17 real quick. I want to piggyback off of what Deacon Yawasap was saying with this show, and all praises to the Most High. I mean, I'm humbled by that because we're just putting in our brick. We're doing what we know needs to get done in order for the two sticks to come together as one.
We all had a job.
Right.
We all have a job.
Right.
You know?
But it's actually prophetic what Deacon is bringing out. We're going to read about it here because I'll break it down as he reads it. Okay.
17 and
no, Deuteronomy 33 and 17.
This is the book of Deuteronomy, chapter 33, verse 17. His glory is like the firstling of his bullock.
It's talking about the tribe of Joseph, which we know was made into Ephraim and Manasseh. Ephraim being the so-called Puerto Ricans as the head tribe of the northern kingdom. Just like Judah's the head tribe of the southern kingdom, northern kingdom head tribe is Ephraim, who are the so-called Puerto Ricans, who this man, Albizu Campos, was from. Okay, go ahead.
And his horns are like the horns of unicorns.
Unicorns, okay. I went over this on the show. If you go to, I'm going to say it, I'll probably take it off, but you go to Edema Online, okay. If you could post it, Shia, and the links, okay, you'll see when you look at the unicorn, the Hebrew word for that is reem, R-E-E-M, okay, which was used, is also used in Job, to identify a unicorn, okay, a rhinoceros is what I'm saying, a rhinoceros, okay. So when it says unicorn here, it goes back to biblical ancient words, okay, meaning a rhinoceros. The symbol of Ephraim is the rhinoceros. This is why it's explaining here. This is how one of the characteristics, but Most High used to prove that the so-called Puerto Ricans are from the tribe of Ephraim. Okay, that's who it's talking about.
90 seconds.
With them, he shall push the people together.
He shall do what?
Push the people together.
Push the people together. Guess what that means? Not just Northern Kingdom. That means Southern Kingdom too, because that's prophecy back in Ezekiel 37. He is going to utilize the tribe of Ephraim to push all of us together as that one stick, as that bow and that arrow. Go ahead.
To the ends of the earth.
To the ends of the earth, because guess what? All praises to the Most High God with the internet, social media, etc., and us going on these missions all over the world, okay, teaching this truth and the word of the Most High God. We're waking people up. Go ahead.
And they are the 10,000s of Ephraim.
Uh-huh.
And they are the thousands of Manasseh.
Ephraim and Manasseh, the two horns on a rhinoceros.
All praise to the Most High. So the Most High is like I said, monumental.
There's no accident that you're saying that.
This is the milestone that the Most High is want to take this thing to the next level.
No, I was just gonna ask for closing thoughts. I guess that's the closing.
That was
thoughts.
mine. No, that was mine. That was mine.
I just asked for the closing thoughts.
Yeah.
Deacon, it's always a pleasure just from knowing you and as a person, not just a lot of people just see the Deacon, but knowing you as an individual all these years. That in and of itself is a pleasure and an honor to have you here with us on the show.
10 seconds.
More for the double honors for you being an elder. Thank you for being on the show with us. All right. Looking forward to, I'm sure the congregation looking forward to hearing from you on the Sabbath. And everybody's excited that you're here. And that's the show. Make sure you tune in. Saturday, we do the hour slot normally, all right? That's 11 a.m. Arizona time. And then next Wednesday, Lord's will, we'll be on in our regular slot, 7 p.m. Arizona time, 9 p.m. Eastern time. We're going to continue dealing with the revolutionary spirit, specifically the revolutionary spirit of Albizu Campos as an example in this walk and what comes with it, all right? Because with revolution, the heat get turned up. Like Deep brought out at the beginning of the show, you also get enemies coming at you when that thing happened as well, right? So we'll talk more about that also, all right? Yes. So that's the show. Like, share, support. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in. And with that, we say shalom.
Shalom.
Yeah, shalom.
Lego.
Israel is back.
We back.
Israel is back. Got the nations running scared because Israel is back. All lies on us, cause we keeping when the Lord will return, Babylon will fall. Precepts solid. We got them on lock. God's chosen people with Christ as our rock. Israel is back.
We back.
Israel is back.
We back.
You heathen, get ready for our whip to crack.
Damn.